As discussed earlier, a short while ago, a broadcasting authority, Icasa, wants to amend sports broadcasting regulations. It says major international and national sporting events must be broadcast on free-to-air channels. This will include events like the FIFA World Cup and the Africa Cup of Nations. Icasa says it wants to strike a balance between audience and revenue. It also says this will allow a wider audience to access sports events. For reaction on this, I'm now joined by Russell Paul, who is the South African Football Association's acting CEO. Good evening, Russell. Thanks very much for your time. First, do you agree with the regulator around why these amendments are necessary?
Yeah, we're not very sure on what they actually mean. The understanding, obviously, we support the fact that more and a broader scope of South Africans should be able to view matches and sport in general in the country, but we don't understand what they're trying to aim at, because I think what the very objective that they're trying to reach is going to damage the role players that they're looking to serve. If you look at the fact that we have something like 3.2 million members, we have 343 local football associations, we have 52 regions. They rely on financial support from the association, and we have to subsidize them in whichever way we can, and that's done through broadcast revenue. You can't go ahead and take a right or an obligation on the one side. They both go hand in hand. So on the one hand, they're saying it needs to be on the free-to-air. We applaud that. But we only have, technically, one free-to-air broadcaster who's broadcasting sport. ETV doesn't do that. So where is the SABC going to find the space in the first instance? Secondly, the financial resource to be able to do that. Rugby, football, cricket are sometimes played at the same time. SABC only has 1, 2, 3. That's it. How are they going to do that? They are removing the commercial opportunities from the federations to be able to commercialize that property. We know they talk about the issue around wanting to take away the whole thing about exclusivity, but that's generally where broadcasters make their money from. It's an exclusive product that goes to somebody, and it's a cycle. Even if you're going to free-to-air and you're offering free-to-air and exclusivity, they have an opportunity to go to commercial partners and sell them advertising. Why do they want to buy the advertising on that program? Because it's the only place you can watch a Bafana, you can watch a Springbok rugby game, you can watch the Proteas, you can watch netball. It's the only place you can do that. Well,
I mean, the regulator is saying that where, for example, it makes commercial sense, or let's say other broadcasters other than, the national public broadcaster in this instance are able to acquire the rights, then it must be on a non-exclusive basis, which you say is the very problem. But what about the possibilities of delaying, for example?
The question of, and I think the SABC is best placed to answer this question, the whole thing about the so-called delayed live, it's a non-existent product. People are not interested in that. People want to watch the sport live, and I say we support that. But we need to find an equitable solution. You can't place an obligation on a federation to say you must give it to, let's say, a free-to-air, be it SABC, be it ETV, whoever it is. But then you don't place a further obligation on the other party to say, well, you need to compensate them. Now, if the SABC is going to do that, or a free-to-air broadcaster is going to do that, somebody's going to have to pay that money. Government would have to do that, and government has got a lot of other things better to do with their money than turn around and say, we're going to have to find a few billion rand to try and fund this process.
What has been the response of the regulator in particular when you have raised these issues with them? Because I understand that you have had some meetings with them.
It's interesting. We had a discussion with them, as is common cause in the environment at the moment, that we have been at loggerheads with the SABC for a while regarding broadcast partnership and funding. And we raised this matter with them, and funnily enough, they said they understand us. They said they understand the process, and they did indicate that it's a commercial issue. But if we go back to the point, you can't place that responsibility or obligation on the SABC on the one hand, and the same obligation on us, and then say, well, sort it out commercially. It's impossible. That's just football. You need to deal with rugby, cricket, netball. You take about the other thing that they now say, it's World Cup. What World Cup? Are they saying the World Cup final, Are they saying the World Cup qualifying matches? Are they saying the AFCON qualifying and AFCON thing? That in itself is going to place a problem, because we need to consult with FIFA, we need to consult with CAF and COSAFA.
Now, but if for a second you put yourself where, like, in the shoes that, or in the awkward situation or position that the SABC finds itself in, how would you do it differently? What do you think is missing in how they are dealing with this, which some of you have said Icasa is now trying to deal with? How would you do it differently?
I'm not sure I fully understand your question, but I mean, in terms of Icasa doing it differently, I think there needs to be, it's something that we're working on at the moment. In terms of the SABC from a commercial perspective, we believe that there's different models that can be engaged in terms of how to commercialize the product, be it football, be it rugby, be it cricket, netball, whatever it is. And the SABC itself is best placed to that, but we're also in a position to assist them. And that's something that we started talking to the SABC about.
But what do you think goes to the heart of their problem? Is it a lack of will to actually do what you believe can be done? Is it because they just don't have the know-how to do what you believe can be done or other people do across the world? What do you think stops the SABC from doing that which you believe is doable?
I think it's a very difficult situation that the SABC finds itself in at the moment. It's sitting with a massive deficit, which has been brought on by issues which they have raised publicly a while ago, and I'm not going to go into those elements. You know, they've kept talking about the fact that I think football is costing them about 400 million. But that's not true in a sense, because they're talking about a very wide spectrum of football. They were paying us 110 million a year. Now, that was to deal with just purely the Bafana Bafana, Banyana Banyana, and under 20 matches. If you look at what Icasa is asking for now, they're going down deeper and deeper and deeper. The SABC or any other broadcaster is not going to have the airspace to be able to do that. Neither are they going to be able to find the revenue. Forget about the rights fee. They need to find the revenue to be able to produce all those matches. Not just football matches, rugby, cricket, boxing, tennis, athletics. I mean, one of the categories that they have in there is the IAAF. The IAAF doesn't exist in South Africa. So how are they going to regulate the IAAF, which is a federation in that respect outside of this country? How are they going to regulate that?
I'm sure we haven't had the last word on this particular issue. Thanks indeed for coming.
Thank you.
Russell Paul, who is the South African Football Association's acting CEO.